Here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Compost Coalition meeting. And today we're discussing community compost co-ops. There's a couple pilot sites in New Mexico, and we have some interest from additional locations. So we're recording this today so that whoever can't join us today can watch it later, and hope that this is an informational session that is helpful to you all. So we'll start with just a quick round of introductions, who's in the room. Mostly our Compost Coalition members, a couple of interested new folks, and I really appreciate you all being here. So I'll just start. Maybe my name is Isabel Jeniches. I'm with New Mexico Healthy Soil Working Group. We've been hosting these Compost Coalition meetings on Zoom since the pandemic. And one of the fun things that came out of being together here in community is that we attempted and actually succeeded in writing a grant together for community composting bins, 7 of them around the state. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. And with that, I'll give it over to Stephen to introduce yourself.
Hi there, Steve Glass, Compost Coalition member and chairman of the Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District here in the Middle Rio Grande. We are big supporters, I am personally, and we as an organization are big supporters of composting in all of its guises. So I will turn it over to Sandra.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Sandra West, the Sustainable Waste Specialist at the City of Albuquerque. I am happy to be have been part of the grant process, and we'll be telling you guys later a little bit more about our community composting co-ops. And I'm also happy to be joined by our new Fuse Fellow, who I'm going to turn it over to next. Matthew.
Okay.
Louder.
How about now? It was the other earbud that has the microphone. Okay. Yeah, hi. My name is Matt Gretton. I am the Fuse Fellow that's been placed within the City of Albuquerque's Sustainability Office. My project is to implement citywide composting in whatever form that ends up being. Right now, we're still in the very preliminary discovery phase of talking to industry leaders and community members to figure out what people want and what is the most practical way of providing that for them. My project through the Fuse Fellowship is focused on equity as well as the actual nuts and bolts of implementation. So whatever we decide is going to be the final project is going to have an equity focus on making sure that the community is well served and all portions of the community are served. I'm the owner of Matt's Mushroom Farm, which some of you may know me in that capacity. I've also worked with the South Valley Economic Development Center and the Pueblo of Jemez in various agriculture food systems work. So looking forward to getting to know those of you that I don't, and hello to those of you that I do.
Awesome. Welcome, Matthew. How about John? You want to go next?
Sure. Hi, neighbors. I'm John Zarola. Sorry you can't see me. I'm working on it.
We can see you.
You can?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm Bernalillo County Master Composter, and we've been going since 2010, and we share composting information in the community with those who are interested in hearing about it. I'll go on to somebody else.
What about Amber?
Okay. Hi. I am just getting into the community compost. This is my second meeting with this group. I'm studying like soil microbiology with the soil food web and learning how to identify the microbes with the microscope. I did just talk today actually with one of the people with the bins up here in Santa Fe, Tom. And hopefully I'll be getting involved with that particular bin. So we'll see exactly what happens with that, but it's kind of exciting.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Amber. Joshua, you want to go next?
Yeah, my name is Joshua O'Halloran. We have one of the composting sites at the Agri-Nature Center where I manage the Agri-Nature Center, programming and farming that happens there, as well as a couple other open spaces in the village of Los Ranchos. And we have a community composting site and compost drop-off, as Isabel said, 2 separate things that are on site there. And currently also the acting administrator with the village of Los Ranchos.
Thank you. Nicolette, please go ahead.
I'm Nicolette Lustig, and I'm temporarily up in the Jemez village, and then I'm in Rio Rancho, so I'm kind of bopping back and forth, but there's been a lot of talk on community composting up here, and since we're so close to the Pueblo, introducing that and bringing that into conversation with them to see if they're interested is something I've been kind of working on. So there's a lot of good ideas going around here, and just kind of taking in what I can and grow off of that. So yeah.
Thanks, Nicolette. And Jaron, please go ahead. We can't hear you. We see you.
Testing.
Yay, that's better.
Oh, okay. I might just have to speak up a little bit too. I don't know. My name is Jaron Poplinski. I'm with the Urban Waters Partnership here in the Middle Rio Grande and Albuquerque, focused broadly on watershed health. And I am also the Water Resources Coordinator at Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District. As our board chair, Steve said, we're all about it at Ciudad when it comes to composting and how that can help improve our watershed health. So thank you.
Definitely. Thanks. Christina.
I'm Christina Salvador. I work at Santa Fe Botanical Garden, which is a 19-acre public garden on Museum Hill in Santa Fe. I'm the operations director, and we set up our compost bin this year as a part of the community composting project. And our members are trained volunteers inside of our volunteer program right now, and we're hoping to expand it and make it more community involvement. And it was really cool to hear what you were working on, Amber, with looking at the microbes. And maybe I can talk to you later about that, because we like to investigate more of like the scientific component of the compost bins.
Cool.
Definitely,
Yeah,
I would love that.
Could also be an interesting topic for a future coalition meeting. Just having the idea. Thank you. Amy.
Yeah, hello. I am with the Quivira Coalition here in Santa Fe, although we work throughout New Mexico and also Colorado and Montana. I plug into kind of composting in a lot of different ways, but with Quivira, we're connecting farmers and ranchers to kind of ag scale composting systems through partnerships with Reunity, doing like the aerated static piles, also doing some biochar and trying to see how to effectively apply it on rangelands and dry lands. So just finished my compost facility operator training. Stephen Glass was amazing trainer, along with lots of other people, but really appreciated your knowledge and experience. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy, and congratulations. Well, Perdita, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I work here at the Pueblo Santa Ana, my wellness center. Composting, I have a little teeny worm bin I've been working on for a couple of years. Just with my leftover tea leaves, really looking to go bigger, hopefully, or things for a regular source of scraps. But she's interested in moving this forward.
Thanks. And it's a little hard to hear you, so next time maybe speaking up a bit. Thank you. Casey, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Casey Williams. I tend the land at Farm and Table Restaurant in Albuquerque. Take care of the land that's connected to it. Otherwise, yeah, I'm a compost enthusiast and soil microbiology enthusiast as well. So good to be here.
Thanks, Casey. And Thomas, welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Tomek Falkowski. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Forestry at New Mexico Highlands University. And I'm also the chair of the Sustainability and Conservation Committee for Highlands. For composting involvement, definitely do composting just at my home. But a big reason that I'm here today is that we have been really interested at Highlands in trying to organize and get a community composting project off the ground. We initially got some pushback from administration, but there's been enough turnover at the top where I'm hoping that with some new folks there, they might be a bit more amenable to the opportunity, particularly if there's some grant funding available. So looking, and the challenge has been though that as a institution of higher ed, we're not actually eligible for any of the RAID grants. And so finding community partners and hoping to learn more about that process. So thanks everyone. Looking forward to hearing more about all of your work and the projects here.
Great, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, and here's the agenda for today. We will talk about funding opportunities, so as you already mentioned. And last but not least, Josie, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey there, I'm Josie Butler with New Mexico Interfaith Housing. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer who operates throughout New Mexico. I'm on here because we have quite a few residents at our newest affordable housing community, Silo Yard, which is a live-work space for artists. We have a master gardener who lives there, a very vibrant community garden, a master composter, and then about 5 other residents who compost on their own. But just looking how to plug in our residents with the wider green community in Santa Fe and statewide.
Great, thanks for joining. Okay, let's dig right in. I have as a first program point an overview of the current pilot projects for community compost co-ops. Actually, here's one more person that just joined. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself? Welcome. We just got through all the introductions, so please do. Oh, and here's Kaylee as well. 2 more. All right. Excellent. Ashley, please go ahead. We can't hear you, although you appeared unmuted. Let's see. Kaylee, can you hear us? Can you introduce yourself?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah, perfect.
I'm so sorry to join late. My name is Kaylee Warren. I'm based out of northern New Mexico. I work with the nonprofit organization Table Women United. We're an Indigenous women-led nonprofit organization. My role at the org is I'm the program coordinator of our environmental justice program. Part of that work includes community education efforts around food and seed sovereignty. And we have a 1.5 acre community ethnobotanical garden in Espanola, New Mexico, which is in dire need of a composting system. So really excited to learn more about the coalition and the opportunities to potentially explore how we could continue to build up that space with composting. Yeah, sorry to be late. Excited to hear more.
No, welcome, Kaylee. And is Ashley with you? With your organization?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, we'll see it in the chat because her microphone does not work. So, okay, welcome to both of you. I'd say we jump in and give you a little overview of what's going on already. Sandra, you said you have a PowerPoint. Is this what would be applicable here? Yeah, please go ahead and share with us what you have. And I would encourage everyone from the coalition members to, jump in and make it a bit more of a conversation as we usually do.
Thank you very much, Isabel. And yes, there are people on this call that actually know more about the process, especially getting it started, than I do. And so I'll share what I have and just, jump in whenever if you have things to add. So to get things started, I kind of started with regulations because I pulled from our training materials. So I start with regulations in my training. Technically, community composting does fall under the New Mexico solid waste rules. I'm currently working on a registration process that I've been working with NMED on figuring out how to make that happen in a way that works for community scale composting. And we came up with another training. I'll share those materials. Thank you very much, John Zerola, for your help with that. We've worked with our master composters to make that happen. And afterwards, I'm happy to share the operations plan, and I'll be sharing a link in the chat momentarily with more information about all the resources, training materials, things of that nature that have been helpful for us with that piece. You're welcome to use them at any point. And then but really, NMED supports composting. So the RAID grant, which I'll drop that link in the chat as well, was what made it possible. There are other funding sources. The USDA actually currently has 2 different, and the hyperlinks aren't coming through. So I'll have to put the hyperlinks in momentarily. That could be possibilities for nonprofits or educational institutions. So remind me later, I can put those hyperlinks and just put those in now. And but it really, wasn't just us. There were 7 sites, Village of Los Ranchos. Thank you very much, Joshua, for being on, and like a variety of other locations, and 7 in total. So we're really excited for the city to be a part of that process. And then I have a map of them that Isabel created. Thank you so much. And if you're looking for more information on these sites afterwards, the chat's going to be just chock full of stuff here today. I dropped the Healthy Soils page that, thank you very much, Isabel, she created, which also provides some background on the grant, where these sites are, a bit of information about each site, as well as their what they're based on, which are successes from Washington, D.C. and especially Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Not only that, but there are plans, which I'm sure we'll talk about the construction later, but you can download the plans as well from there. So if you're wanting to get started, we're trying it through this to make this as accessible as possible to people, which is one of the things I love about this project. So yes, I did, have some examples of some other ones. Some of the places that we learned from and got this information from are generally wetter environments. And so there was some adaptation that Casey and others can talk about in more detail of making these systems work for our arid environment. Here's a great example of the Agri-Nature Center one, and Isabel showing it off at our celebration. That was the first one to be built. And some of us actually did not put some photos in Our sites, we ended up lining the bins to help with moisture control on that. So there's lots of ways you can kind of tailor them as needed to your group of people and what they want to do, as well as your space in general. But Joshua can tell you how his are working. I don't think they're lined, and I suspect they're doing well. Joshua, you're welcome to unmute and weigh in if you would like to on that.
Yeah, they are doing well. Yeah.
So there's lots of kind of optional things. Some people love them being lined, some don't. You know, it's kind of a make it what you want it to be. And so there are 2 city facilities. Here is a photo of photos from each of the opening celebrations in the city. It's at the Bareilles Senior Center as well as the North Valley Senior Center. So ours are a little bit different than some. We paired them with community gardens, which I think works really well. Santa Fe did that as well. And you have this great volunteer base that already kind of understands the process. But we still put together a separate training. Here's the volunteer space, and really what that looks like, instead of that 3-day training, which requires a lot more people to put that on, that is kind of like the typical operators training. We put together a hybrid training, which is mainly classroom and ended in outside, that is more resembles some of the master composter trainings. It was a combination of presentation from our master composters and from myself on kind of like the community side of things. We followed up with hands-on training, which is great for them getting started with the bins, and then followed up with supplemental learning. So we did composting tips via email and make sure they had a clear communication channel with myself, and then periodic site visits to help out as needed. And that hands-on piece, there are also some other learning materials that are really great. I'll drop all of those in the chat from the ILSR. Some of them are in Spanish too, which is excellent. And then I have a Google folder with some other education examples, some training PowerPoint from another local government, and then ILSR's best management practices. So in terms of you're looking for other resources for how to do the community style composting and the rallying of the volunteers and all of that, community composting, well, one, the best practices guide is great, but the community composting 101 certificate course is excellent. They actually have a scholarship as well, and discounts and things. So here's kind of an array of some of the materials that were created to make this happen that are not your traditional things. So we have the operations plan, which is like pretty different than any other operations plan you'll find for like large scale composting. I'm happy to share that. We're just adding, I need to add, they requested one more sign with a bit more detail. And so I'm working on adding that, and then hopefully we'll be done. We created a checklist for their static method. We are using a static method at our site. Some people are going to use hot. There's like different ways you can do it, which is nice. Here's an example on the far left of one of the tips. And again, trying to put the material in both English and Spanish when possible, with the understanding that some of our people do prefer Spanish. And again, training materials, like a flyer on like what it is and how to get involved, and some of these pieces. All of these, I think, except for maybe the email, are in that Google folder, the first Google folder link that I shared. And you're welcome to use them. So in terms of like, I call it staff needs, but basically management needs, and others actually would be interested to hear how that goes for them. We have more than one site. And so I really like emphasize building this in from the beginning, is like, who's going to manage this and how does that look? And it may take more time, especially if you have more than one site that is under your purview, as we do, than if you just have one site. But really making sure you hit the main points of like recruiting volunteers, which may be more of a thing for you, maybe not, depending upon like if you co-locate with operations that you already have, it may not be a big deal. Conducting trainings and retrainings, maintaining a volunteer list and tracking trainings, having additional materials available, checking in with education supplements, Some of our best sites are when we have one of our sites that a master composter just decided to kind of adopt. It's close to home and just regularly volunteers. And that's the dream. That is ideal because you have someone there relatively regularly who has a lot of knowledge. I find that a lot of people are pretty hesitant. And one thing I actually did graze over maybe too much for those who aren't used to this cooperative community composting co-op model is that it's those who are adding to it in the community are volunteering their time and do have a training requirement at the very beginning so that they understand what they're doing, but then volunteer usually about an hour a month to maintain the system. Now, some volunteers may want to do like an hour a week. Like there's a lot of range in what that can look like and how many volunteers you have. We decided to go with the static method because of the size of our volunteer group and the fact that our volunteers were not wanting to do some of that frequent turning that is required for hot pile. And so we went with static pile, but you can do hot pile, which is what Lancaster tends to do. They do the more frequent turnovers and those types of things. And then again, meeting, the resources that are accessible. It might be in Spanish. There might be other things like more visuals that you want to do. And then just periodically checking in, being a resource for them as they have questions, which seem to be higher in the first few months. That's really like very quick overview with a bunch of resources in the chat on kind of what we do. There's a lot that can be filled in with background, and I highly encourage you to use the links in the chat to explore more around how this works, and would like to pass it off to be able to hear from everybody else who's got one of these and what worked well for them and what didn't, those types of things.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandra. That was a perfect introduction. Who else wants to chime in from the current pilots? How's it going for you all? And what do you want to share for others that are just considering starting a co-op? Okay, maybe we'll do yeah, Christina.
I'm just going to bring up a really not exciting topic, but for us, at least as an organization, and since I'm in operations, I had to reevaluate our insurance policies. We acquired a chipper shredder to go along with our awesome new bins, and then we had to just kind of make sure, so just safety and coverage for the organization, and especially with volunteers, and then adopting some more policies and training just for safety but we had a chipper shredder kind of also brought into this, which has been great. We love it. But
interesting. And that brings up a good point around browns. Like you're going to have this stream of things that are typically called greens. And we started in the summer and we're scrambling initially to keep up with browns. And thankfully fall will solve that problem for us, but to some degree, but understanding and having that, that pathway of having browns to get them on hand or when needed is really important to think about for some sites more than others.
Yeah, and I think Sandra, you touched on it. So there's a couple of aspects to it in terms of regulations, where insurance might also fall a bit more into that category. And the good thing is that we have these 7 pilots underway. And a lot of that has already come to the fore and has been either addressed or is in the works, as Sandra mentioned, with the regulation aspect of it. So this is why this is very nice that we have these pilots so that they can make the following projects a lot easier, we hope. That is the plan. What I can do is maybe just share quickly the website that we've created, since Sandra, you mentioned that. Can you all see that? Okay, great. So this is on the New Mexico HealthySoil.org website /community composting. This was our opening ceremony at the Agri-Nature Center in Los Ranchos. And that was actually the first one that that was installed. And here is what Sandra shared already, the 7 locations across the state, and you can see a little bit more about them when you click on the header here. It unfolds with sometimes a picture or just the contact information. So the compost captains, that's kind of the lingo that that Lancaster uses, and we adopted that, although maybe not all the sites are doing it that way. There's definitely flexibility, like we're not dictating, because every site is a little bit different. But the compost captain is what Sandra mentioned, that dedicated volunteer that is there helping it all go smoothly, doing the training and checking in on the pile or piles and making sure they're all doing well. And then at the very bottom, it says resources for community co-ops. And so this is where you can learn more and download some of these resources that Sandra also mentioned. You're seeing here actually Casey, who built the bins, who's on the call today. And Casey and a couple of other folks from the coalition really worked hard in putting together a construction manual and also a list of materials. So all of that is available. I imagine that there is some lessons learned from building the bins and then from using them now for a couple months. So this will again benefit future composters. And we'll hear from Casey on how that went. And so yeah, here's when you click on these, the instructions for building them, and some signage templates, some handout templates, and the community compost manual from actually Philadelphia, but it's very applicable for us here. So that's all on our website. And let's see, what did we want to talk about next? Maybe, oh yeah, so I had the question, what makes a community compost co-op different from a community drop-off site? And Joshua, why don't you tackle that, since you have both on your site?
All right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have both on our site. We have a large, like 300-gallon bin that people come and from the community, and they can drop off their materials there. And then we use that for our own composting in our windrow composting that we turn with a front end loader. So it's really easy, fast way to do composting at a large scale. So we also get a lot of leaves from people in the village. We also get all the wood chips from Baca's trees, Hector's trees, all the stuff that happens in the North Valley. So we have mounds and mounds of wood chips. If anybody needs browns, let me know. We've got so many browns. But we take all of that, also a park nearby, and all people who live nearby who mow their lawns. We take grass clippings as well, as long as they don't use any herbicides or pesticides on their lawns. And so we collect a lot of grass and wood chips, and that feeds our windrow. So that's the drop-off side of things, is we're constantly getting trucks pulling in, dumping, and we turn it into windrow compost. And we also get a lot of spent grains from breweries as well that are nearby. On the community composting side of things, we have some regular volunteers who come, and they bring their compost with them when they come volunteer, usually on Wednesday mornings, and they drop it off then. And they'll we have a pile of wood chips right next to our bins, so they'll add their greens, and then they add the browns on top of that, wet it down, close it up again. So that's pretty much the extent of how we're doing that, is people bring their greens, dump it in the bin. Once that bin gets full, we're doing static composting as well. So once that bin gets full, we can go to the next one. But as we add to it, it's breaking down fast, so it's getting lower, and we're just keeping on working on that, and then we'll move to the next bin, and then we use that first bin and do it that way. So we've been doing it static. Yeah, it's a combination. Our volunteers have been a combination of master gardeners that come there anyways for the master gardening program, and then they've become involved in the composting, as well as some other regular volunteers or people who live in the area.
Great. Yes, and so the co-op aspect of it all with the community composting, that adds then another layer, which is the educational layer that Sandra mentioned as well. As a standard, maybe it's about 1 hour per month that people say they would like to contribute. Again, that's not set in stone or anything, but that seems to be like a nice time that people can contribute. And that can be, you can offer a workshop or a community action, like turning the compost or sifting the compost. And the other piece of that is as well that they might be able to take some of the compost home if they have a garden. So this is the co-op aspect of the community compost co-op. It is, again, not a requirement. If it doesn't work for your organization or for your situation, totally fine. But it's been something that we've liked a lot because it enables people to get a little bit more involved than just drop and leave, So I think that's important because we want to educate people and give them the chance to experience really that full circle that we are encouraging, thinking in full circles and not seeing food scraps as waste, but to really get that sort of firsthand experience of, okay, this is a resource and it can come back to actually nurture the soil, nurture the plants, and we eat those again, So that is the ideal situation that we would like to see. But again, it's up to you and what works for you. Okay, Amy, I'm cognizant that you need to drop off. Do you have something you would like to add before you do?
I can't think of anything. It's been very comprehensive. So I've been sort of more involved in the beginning and, just excited to hear how things are progressing. And yeah, that's it. Good job.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, I'd say we'll jump on the bin construction topic. Casey, if you want to take that on, and I might follow along and show some of the materials that were put together, such as the manual and the cost sheets, because there's so much good stuff that was created. I'll share my screen while maybe you talk.
Okay, sounds good. I don't know exactly what you want, but so the design, we kind of based it off the Lancaster design. Amy Larson helped me quite a bit at the beginning, and then just took it and ran with it, and it seemed to be the best compromise for a continuous composting system where you're always adding material and something that's relatively well enclosed. John Zarola helped for some of the design aspects as well. So yeah, it's a 3-bay system, kind of like just a wooden box with walls, basically. The lid, the people, I haven't been to any of the sites since they were built, so I don't know the usability. That's one thing that somebody else can chime in on at some point, but the lids, to keep them open, I came up with this kind of makeshift rolled steel arms that can prop the doors open, and that and the slats that go in the front are the two kind of trickiest parts, I think. The rest is pretty much, there's a picture of it. So I don't know how well that's worked, but it worked okay right after I built them, but I don't know as far as using them every day or every week. And then the front, you can see actually in that picture, it's the ones that we built, we could only acquire narrower boards, so they're not quite as wide as in this picture. But you know, if for new sites they can adapt that as needed, you could do a swinging door, a sliding door, or put handles to make the slats easier to pull out or put back in. Yeah, I mean that's about it. I actually created this document that Isabel is sharing here. I tried to put dimensions everywhere I could, and we did have 2 sites that were built by other people from these plans. So you know, I don't know how good of a job I did. It was a lot of work, but I think moving forward, one thing to note is, which seems obvious, the more level that the site is, the ground, wherever you're building it, the easier it'll be to make sure everything's square whenever you build the bin. So that turned out to be pretty important in the end. And none of them are completely level, so you just the builder of the bin has to just account for that and kind of adjust here and there. And then the other thing is I actually ended up redoing these plans. We built all of these bins out of cedar. I probably wouldn't go that direction if I was to do it again. So I redid the plans, and so now there are 2 sets. There's one with pine / whitewood. It's the exact same construction idea, just slightly different dimensional lumber. The reason I would go a different direction is because the cedar cracks pretty easily. It's a lot more expensive, and it's harder to find the dimensional lumber that you want. It's more limited for the options. And so if you built it out of like pine, the plans that I came up with, it would be like probably twice as heavy because it's using 2x instead of 1x, etc. But it'd be super sturdy. Yeah, and then you can also paint the inside either before or after construction, and the outside, I suppose, with some kind of oil to help protect the wood if desired, or like Sandra mentioned, you can line them. You know, there's a lot of room to play around, and I think, like I said, I don't know how they've worked out for the people that have actually been using them, but this was kind of what we came up with. And for building them, after pre-cutting like 3/4 of the lumber for any given bin, it took about 8 hours for one person. And the more I did, obviously, the easier it got. Yeah, the bottom is lined with hardware cloth. Not my, I don't love hardware cloth, but it's for rodent mitigation. That can be added or not, depending on the site. And then there's T-posts that we had planned to hammer into the ground in front of the walls, basically, and to tie the bins to the T-posts for extra security. The thought is, like, if you're going to be using a tractor around it and you hit it or something, realistically, they're pretty solid. They're not going to blow away in the wind or anything. Yeah, I don't know. What else you got, Isabel? Is that good enough overview?
Like very, very instructional. I wanted to just quickly show folks how much detail there is available. This is something you put together and continuously updated as well, which is like a materials list, meticulous materials list with everything to price and dimensions. And so this is available to folks if you want to go this route and build one of these bins. And the focus was really on making them work for our arid climate. So that's the overarching goal here.
And I will say, for one thing I forgot to mention is I never did build one of the pine / whitewood bin sets. So, and I kind of came up with those. I adapted the instructions. So just as a disclaimer, if somebody uses the plans to build them, there may be some errors that I wasn't able to correct. And then the second thing is on that materials list. Most of what I was trying to use a big box construction store for the materials, because I thought it would be the most accessible to people in different areas. Obviously, if you have a local hardware store or lumber store or lumber mill or something, you can adapt the plans as needed, but it's a really good list to get you started, and it has the dimensions. And if you do go with one of the big box stores, I think Lowe's is where we got most of the stuff from. There's like item numbers as well. So yeah, again, it's just having to adapt to your own individual needs if you're going to build one. But we tried to make it as easy as possible to replicate as well.
Thank you so much. I'd say we'll just kind of move on in the interest of time and then do questions at the end. But Casey, you can stick around for that, I think. So if you have questions for Casey, we'll do those at the end. And thank you. Thank you so much. So I think this is a good segue to the funding opportunities that we want to talk about just quickly. And again, this is not... you don't have to go this route, but this is what we did for funding, and it's it's relatively easy as funding goes, and applications go, and it's available. I mean, it's here in New Mexico, so that's why we want to bring it up with you. Okay, so this is again on our website here, linked actually. It says how these were funded. Okay, here. And it's through the Department of the Environment and the Recycling and Illegal Dumping Fund. So here's the link to that. It doesn't sound very exciting, but it is actually a really cool program. And although it doesn't explicitly list composting as one of the actions that you can get funding for, they really welcome composting applications. And so full disclosure, I'm on the committee there. And when we put in our application, there was great enthusiasm for it. So I would definitely encourage anyone to give this grant a try. It is, so it's through the Department of the Environment. It's on their website under grant programs. So here's the Recycling and Illegal Dumping Fund. And one of the hurdles that is real is that not any entity can apply. So this is who is eligible. And I think, Thomas, you mentioned this in the beginning. So it's just cities, counties, solid waste authorities, Pueblos, tribes, nations, land grant communities, and then cooperatives, which is in the Illegal Dumping Act. It's not, our usual co-op. And we have, since I've been on the committee, I've not seen this actually being used. So I'm not sure how helpful that is. But so that might be the biggest hurdle. And the way we got around that a little bit is we have in one of the 7, actually more than one, but one of the 7 pilot projects volunteered as being the administrative entity for the rest of them. So in this case, it was the Agri-Nature Center, which is under the village of Los Ranchos. So this is a municipality. And so Joshua, if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about the administrative duties that you had to take on to make this happen, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so let's see, it's a reimbursement grant. So we had to put forward have it in our budget ahead of time to purchase everything, and then it was reimbursed by submittal of receipts. The challenge for that was just that everything had to be submitted in detail. So all receipts had to be submitted. So every last screw, there was a receipt for that had to be submitted and be in the that we had to report back in order to get reimbursed for. So that presented some difficulty just getting all the quotes, because as a municipality, you need 3 quotes for every purchase, and then we needed to get 3 quotes comparing like things, and then get reimbursement from receipts on everything. So it presented some difficulties to do the administrative part. But as far as our quarterly reports that we had to submit, those were very easy. Our grant manager was very easy to work with at NMED. So that was all very smooth, and they were very flexible in working with us. So yeah, any questions I'm happy to answer on the administrative part too.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, and from my perspective, I would say that the admin piece it was just greatly more complex, because we had these 7 different sites, and you very kindly volunteered to be the administrator for them, and so that was definitely sometimes a bit of a stretch, I feel. So 7 sites is a lot, and if you have to get quotes for everything, and you have to get the receipts back from everybody, that really adds a bunch of admin burden. But if you can work with your own city or with your own pueblo, and maybe have 1 or 2 sites or 3, that would be a lot more manageable. So that would be my suggestion, just in from what we've learned, I think.
And I didn't dig into the feasibility of this, but something that the city uses to get around this occasionally is to have a contractor handle the procurement side of things. And so that, depending upon how NMED works it, you'd have to kind of talk to them to see if that would work and if they would have to get 3 quotes. But often the city, if we show that, through whatever the funding agency requires, that we've done our due diligence on getting the contractor, and different funding agencies have different requirements on that. But then that the contractor can just do all the procuring, and that can save you having to get 3 quotes for every nut and bolt, potentially. But we haven't actually confirmed this. It's just something I wanted to put out there for those who might. I haven't confirmed about the rate grant yet, but it might be of interest to ask.
Great.
Yeah, and in that case, you would just have to get. We also had to get 3 contractors to get quotes as well, and Casey had designed them and offered to build them and everything, but we still had to go out for quotes and make sure that we did that there. And then we were purchasing everything, but yeah, if we had put it in Casey's contract that he was going to be the contractor and provide all the materials, I think that would be a lot easier for sure.
Yeah, some good lessons learned here. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that was all we wanted to share. So I know we are at time, but I hope you can stick around for just a little longer, since you started a little later. So yeah, questions from our hopefuls for for everyone. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, just because I have another meeting I need to run to here. But yeah, I'm just wondering if anyone who can offer any suggestions on trying to partner with some of the acceptable partner institutions, just because I have run into several roadblocks in doing so. I don't necessarily know if solid waste offices are necessarily the most responsive by email, and so just wondering if anyone's had any tips or suggestions as how to facilitate coordinating with partner institutions.
Go ahead, Joshua.
Well, I was just going to say, like, doing this for a single site, if you're thinking about this particular model, like, we're talking about a very small grant here. So I'm not sure how much, like, if it would make a lot of sense. Like, for 7 sites, our grant was what, 30,000?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, we're talking about a small amount, and sometimes the headache of the grant can be a little bit more than it's worth if you're just doing 1 site. If you're talking about composting everything at Highlands University, then you're talking about a different style of composting than what this co-op was. Go ahead, Sandra.
So in terms of, if personally, if like the city of Albuquerque was going to go after this again, in the lines with what Joshua said, I'd be like, anyone in our area, I mean, sometimes there's like a distance of travel for a contractor that might be more challenging, but anything within a whatever reach, who wants to add a site, I would be totally open for that. So I would recommend talking to, any eligible entities, MSC, especially if they have sustainability staff or if they have ag staff, their open space divisions, their forestry groups, in eligible entities to see if they're interested, and then being able to pool all the resources and just be able to like, hey, we can leverage your grant and make it go farther and reach more people. And if you could if you want to tie in curriculum education to that, that also boosts the grant. If you guys are already planning to do that, that can be of interest. So I just reach out to those in your area to see if they're interested in going after it. If the city of Albuquerque decides to go after one of these, we would definitely let the group know.
And may I throw in that NMSU at their Las Cruces campus a few years ago had a student composting project. So you might want to check in with that situation and see if that is still a viable option. It was a fairly good sized visually setup that I saw several years ago. So it is a university similar to Highlands, maybe bigger, but this was all done by the students. I'd also like to say there was a woman from Espanola several minutes ago who said that she wanted to set up a composting area somewhere in Espanola, and I don't remember her name or if she's still with us, but that was my, pardon?
I think it's Kaylee. Yes, she's here.
Kaylee. In the sub-village of La Masia for many years, there was a gentleman doing organic gardening, and I do not remember his name, but I'm pretty sure he probably had a composting operation. If he's still there, which may benefit you. And if you're just starting out, on our website, nmcomposters.org, we have plans for several homemade compost bins, which may suit you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And if you can put the email or the URL in the chat from the last resource, that would be awesome.
Okay.
There are grants that are not accessible to some of the entities that the RAID grants are accessible to that would be up your alley. So earlier you'll have to scroll way up because I got a little bit excited about resources in the chat, but the USDA has a couple, and one is specifically for universities, University Research Foundation. So if you're interested in tying this education piece in, it's for food and agricultural service learning programs. I think composting would fit under that piece, so that might be how you get it started. And there's the the logo garden at UNM has been doing education-based stuff. I'm happy to send that, and there's a link of information there. They do courses and they've got composting, and so yeah, they might also have some lessons learned or be interested in partnering on something like that.
Excellent, thank you. I'm just Googling. Do you happen to know or have a link for that USDA grant that you mentioned?
Yeah, I will drop that in the chat. There's two USDA grants right now. So one is Community Food Projects Competitive Grant Program for nonprofits, but then the Food and Ag Service Learning Program, I'm gonna put that one in the chat right now, specifically has educational higher ed and mentioned in it, and that's added to the chat now.
Right. And I'll grab all those links and put them in with my follow-up email with the recordings so that folks who are not here today get those too. Yeah. That's really helpful. Thank you. And of course, I don't know that we've mentioned it, but basically if you don't want to write a grant or get a grant or whatever, then the cost of one of those 3 slot bins was around $4,000, you know, so like Joshua said, not a huge amount of money. So you can also just budget it in, you know. Don't have to write a grant. It's just the reason we wanted to show the rate grant is because the application is really not that hard. And we're very happy to share our application so you can, you know, use it as a model, copy paste or whatever you want to do. So, all right, thanks, Thomas. Any other questions? Yes, Josie, thank you. And please do feel free to just give me a ring. You know, we can talk more. Any other questions, you can always reach out. Any other questions from folks who are interested in the community composting to set one up? Go ahead, this is your chance to to ask all of us who've been through it. So anything else you can think of, just yeah.
This is Perdita. I'm trying a different mic. Is that better?
This is a lot better.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so I'm just thinking about this as far as in a Pueblo community and bringing, you know, that to the table. I know I heard Matthew said that he had worked with Jiménez, and I saw that Isleta Pueblo was one of the 7. So I didn't know if there were any things in particular learned in those circumstances that could be useful to hear about. Like getting volunteers, yeah, that's pretty challenging because folks are pretty busy, but have people had that kind of success, and what does that look like?
I can speak to my experience with the Pueblo.
Please go ahead.
So I was working with the Department of Public Health, and so we had this was during COVID. So like a lot of the stuff I was doing required community input or community participation in order for it to be effective, because we were receiving these enormous federal food donations that were like frozen and had to get distributed out to the public within a couple hours, or they would just spoil. We found that direct engagement with the public was the only way that we could get people to actually show up. That and leaning on the folks that had some authority and had like strings they could pull. So the governor, the council of governors, and then the police force, having them like call people directly and ask them to come in, not like, hey, can you do this? But like, hey, we need to borrow your truck. Can you come in and show up like right now? So setting very, very concrete times for people to do something, not expecting them to follow up to schedule their own time to come volunteer, but like asking them to come do a specific task at a specific time, and then just sorting through your list of people till you found someone that could do it, produced a lot better results than kind of putting out a call for volunteers. Anything that was a general call for volunteers did not produce a lot of results. It had to be a personal appeal or an appeal from an authority to get people to show up and do the work.
And Sandra, you had another good tip here in the chat.
Yeah, so co-locating the bins with so we did our community garden. So either a place that's generating materials, people will frequent and it's easy for them to just bring some of the materials, or places where they're already bringing materials. So some of the Lancaster ones are at their transfer stations, for example. Some of them are doing it parks. So it's kind of in the community where people visit for regular things, and it's relatively easy for them to bring stuff. So the location, I feel like, is especially if you're locating it in places where people already traffic and it's easy for them to just give a few minutes, can really make a difference in terms of the ability to get volunteers and utilizing the system in general.
And there's always the option not to do it with volunteers. I mean, this is, again, we're not saying this is how you have to do it, but that is, you know.
Yeah, I think it'll be a challenge enough to get the staff on board, and you know, someday our volunteers will come. But yeah, even the staff, I know there'll be some hesitation. So but just just a thought. I was just curious. Thanks so much, Matthew and Sandra.
Jaren and Nicolette and Kaylee, any other questions?
I had a very similar question with the Pueblo situation, but that was answered, I think, for the most part. I reached out, and I think it's just getting through the first, the administration to try to see if they're interested. And then, of course, I wanted to kind of see how our future meetings would go to get more resources. But yeah, I think that's, for me at least, it's getting the word spread in the Pueblo area. I think that would be exciting over here in Jimenez. So at least for them too, because it's right next to the landfill. So
if you're going to work in Jemez, I highly recommend getting in touch with the Department of Public Health. They run the community farm that's there down there by where the river and the church is, and that was the program that I was working with when I left, and there's a lot of folks involved with agriculture that are involved with that farm.
Okay.
And so getting in touch with the interim director of public health would be a good entry point to getting the word out to the public or the Pueblo at large, or getting a concierged introduction to the rest of the tribal government, because it could be very hard to peel through the various layers to get to somebody that can actually do something.
yes, yes, definitely. I will do that. Thank you, though.
Great. Haley, any questions from you, or is everything unclear?
I had some experience with Pueblos a few years ago, and we were, this particular Pueblo was not doing community composting. They were interested in teaching Pueblo members home composting. So what the Pueblo did was they bought manufactured compost bins that were freely available to the members of the Pueblo if they attended a home composting class, which I taught. Okay, so that I know that's off topic, but it's another option in the Pueblo environment. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. There are no other questions. I would say you did a good job in answering everything. And again, just if something comes up, absolutely feel free to reach out. And to any one of us, or I'm happy to pass your question on as well. So I hope this was inspiring. It was really fun to set up, to work on it together, to see it come to fruition. And they're still growing. All the 7 locations have just started, so this is just the beginning, and it will be great to see what comes next. Okay, so I think I'll stop recording here.